All right, we're here at Myriad Games Partner Store with Gamesalute.com, and we're showing off a brand new book, Misspent Youth, designed by Mr. Rob Bohl. So, Rob, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dan.
And so why don't you tell us, this just printed last week, actually, at Gen Con, and we have it here in our hot little hands, and this is the first printing. I understand this is sold out already.
It sure is, yeah. It was actually kind of sold out about 5 minutes into Gen Con because I stupidly miscalculated pre-orders, so I had to quickly print and get a bunch more pre-orders out, and I'm very sorry, everybody.
Well, that's
a personal apology.
Yes, so that's a good problem to have when you're selling too many of your game that you have to go back to reprints. But those are going to be coming out probably by the time you're seeing this, or within a couple weeks. Those will be available. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Misspent Youth? What is it? It's a role-playing game, right?
Yeah, it's a science fiction dystopia role-playing game about teenage rebellion and friendship and standing up for what you believe in.
Okay, and so what were your kind of inspirations for the theme of this? Like, what if I'm looking at like what movies that I might have watched that have this theme? What would I look at?
Well, it just so happens that there's an extensive answer to that question in the book in my own handwriting. So, it's got sort of the darkness of A Clockwork Orange, but the friendship of Avatar. It's got the messing with the powerful of Ocean's 11 combined with the impishness of that too, you know.
Does it have giant blue people like Avatar, or is that a different Avatar?
Oh, Avatar, right. Avatar: The Last Airbender. I enjoyed the Jim Cameron movie just fine, but you know, when I say Avatar, I mean The Last Airbender, and I mean the cartoon.
So there's a quote right here on the front. Why don't you read that for us? Because I feel like that really encapsulates what Misspent Youth is all about.
I agree, actually. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. It's George Orwell.
All right, and what is that from?
Is it? I think it is 1984, or it's just something he said that was clever. Okay. Oh, and I just realized I'm missing an end quote, so.
Editing on the fly. So Misspent Youth, it's this nice kind of trade paperback format. It's full color on the inside. Actually, black and white on the inside, full color on the outside there. It is rated M for mature, so if you're under the age of 18, consult your parents or guardians before picking this up, because it does deal with violent content and sexual content and that sort of thing. But it's definitely a neat book if you're looking to pick up and play in that. So why don't you describe kind of how the play experience goes? As there's a GM in this, and they're called like the Overlord or the Master or something.
The Authority. It's funny you should say the Master, because the idea of group creating the Authority, which is the first thing you do when you play, is something that I stole and forgot that I stole from My Life with Master, where the GM is called the Master. And one of the great things about that game is it's kind of like the Igor, the role-playing game, where you play all like... Anyway, one of the great things about that game is that you create a villain together, so that you wind up with a villain that your player character is relevant to your player character by the time you get around to creating your player character. So you create the bad guy, you create the science fiction world together, then you create your group of youthful offenders, then finally you get to creating your individual character. So it's one of the ways that the game is about friendship, because I want to make sure that we know who you are together before we know who you are individually.
And so you kind of cohesively build that authority. Then you build your group, your youthful offenders, and that everybody that's playing in the game is called a youthful offender. This is just a player character. And then you create your individual characters, and you kind of link together neatly between each other. Because as you're building your backstory, you're saying, okay, tell me something about your past and how you interacted with my character. So explain how that works.
Yeah, at the start of every episode, you author friendship questions, and you ask a question about the friendship between your characters of the character to your left. So I might say, why am I the only one that you told that you're a robot? Or why don't you love me? Or what thing that I did for you do you treasure that you don't tell me about? That kind of stuff.
And so these things that your players in the game might not necessarily know, but as a player playing that character, you're going to know, so you can more cohesively build that kind of group together. And about how long this is designed to be played over many sessions, or just kind of a one shot, or?
The number of sessions it takes to play is somewhat random because it depends upon. There'll be a point in a session where you're about to lose, and one of your options is to sell out your convictions, and you only have 5 of them. So if you sell out your convictions, you permanently become more like the authority, but you do win in that moment. And when the first youthful offender character has sold out his or her last conviction, that's the last episode of this series. And if you haven't changed the world enough in the meta world changing mechanic, then when you start this game, you say this awful thing that will come to pass, and if you fail to beat it, then that awful thing comes to pass, and particularly it's your fault, because you were the only ones that could have stopped it. So.
Cool. Well, that's Misspent Youth, designed by our guest, Rob Bohl. So thanks again for joining us. If they want more details on the game, where can they go?
You can go to misspentYouthGame.com and should have the books the 20th of August or so.
Okay. And obviously you can check those out at some of your local stores there, too. A few of them are carrying them. Is there a list of those on the website? Or?
There actually is not a list. That's an excellent idea. Okay. Dan, I don't know why you might have thought of that.
So last thing I wanted to ask you about was, this says issue 1 right up here. Is there going to be an issue 2?
I don't intend there to be, although there could be a future version of the game. I don't have plans for one right now, although I have a lot of rules ideas. Really, issue 1 is a reference to the fact that the original game came out as issue 0 because I want this to look as much like a punk rock zine, particularly Maximum Rock and Roll, as possible. So issue 1 was kind of a nod to anyone who knew the Ash Can. And maybe I might do another version. I didn't intend this, but I rather like that people are worried that I'm going to put a new one out. So
that's a good problem to have. So great. Well, thanks again for talking with us, Rob. We really appreciate it. MisspentYouthGame.com for more details on Misspent Youth. This is your first published design, right?
It is my first published book, yeah.
Okay, well, congratulations. Definitely check it out, and visit Gamesalute.com for all the latest and greatest in games going forward. Thanks again. Take care.
Thanks, Dan.